Hi there, Internet. It's Mike from QuickNode, and we're here today with Max Kaplan of Sol Strategies. Sol Strategies is one of the oldest digital asset treasuries. They started way back in 2018, focused on Bitcoin, before anyone had ever heard of MicroStrategy or Michael Saylor. And since then, they've pivoted to become one of the main Solana digital asset treasuries. You can track Sol Strategies as well as all other DATs on strategicsolanareserve.org. And if you're interested in setting up a strategic reserve for your own company, you can do that by clicking on the button on that site. Now, with that out of the way, welcome, Max.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you having me.
So Max is the CTO of Sol Strategies, which is probably one of the more well-known digital asset treasuries. Probably a good question for our audience might be, is there a difference between a digital asset treasury and a strategic reserve?
Good question. I think a strategic reserve would be something like this. And in my opinion, I think the market would mostly agree with me. A strategic reserve could be any company that you don't associate with cryptocurrency having some sort of reserve in, Bitcoin, gold, Solana, any asset out there. A digital asset treasury is kind of this relatively new structure where basically the entire point of the company is really to increase the exposure of the underlying asset, right? And usually the term that's used is Bitcoin per share, ETH per share, Solana per share, right? Whereas, on one end of the spectrum, if you have a company like Microsoft, that's not their sole goal. If they have a treasury of Bitcoin on the other end of the spectrum, you have a DAT, which is kind of a relatively new thing, and they are trying to actually increase their exposure, increase your exposure.
That makes a lot of sense. So a strategic reserve is really something that a company has in addition to whatever else their main business may be. And a DAT is really just a vehicle for pure retail exposure to that digital asset. Sol Strategies, under a different name, has been in this space for quite some time. So I guess my question is, tell us how you came here and also how Sol Strategies came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep my background short, but just on myself, I've been in crypto since 2017, and I joined a really small company at the time called Kraken, where we were just trying to figure out this whole crypto thing. It was going to take off. I was one of the first 10 engineers, and that blew up. And we went from 100 people in the whole company when I started to over 3,000. I did 6 years at Kraken. I led DevOps and data engineering, managing 60 engineers. I discovered Solana, and I was like, wow, this is the future. I created my own validator at the time, which is called Orange Ventures. And then it was actually acquired by Sol Strategies. And that's how I got here. And to talk a little bit about Sol Strategies, the company has actually been publicly traded since I believe it was 2018. They actually had Bitcoin on the balance sheet before MicroStrategy. So we have a great ticker. We're based out of Canada, which is HODL. The company was really the first company out there to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. Really innovative back then. As the Bitcoin ETFs came out, and other Bitcoin DATs came out, and the company really just being based in Canada, there wasn't as much demand anymore for just like a pure Bitcoin DAT. And in September of 2024, I think it was a little earlier, the company decided to switch completely to Solana.
Mm-hmm.
And we were the first Solana, what is now termed as DAT. This is even before there was a term for it. What the company really wanted to do is they wanted to differentiate themselves, because I think there's multiple different types of DATs. And, I think we really saw this even before I joined. But on one end of the DAT spectrum, you can have a DAT that's just trying to increase your SOL per share, right? And there's many different ways to do that, whether it's on the financing side or on the revenue side. What the company really focused on was actually building a real revenue generating business on Solana, because what I'm really bullish on is Solana, the network. By definition, I also really am bullish on Sol, the token, but there's so many different things that can be done on Sol, the network. And the company was purchasing a bunch of validators. As of right now, we have about 2.8 million Sol delegated across all of our validators. Only 430,000 Sol since we last disclosed is our own Sol. So building great products for other people, and that's us.
I'm actually really interested in this kind of concept of, rather than just stacking Sol, looking at really a broader strategy. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that? Because I think it's probably one of the differentiators between the different DATs.
Yeah, absolutely. What we do at Sol Strategies is we're running a staking business, right? And just to talk a little bit about that, we run 4 different validators: Sol Strategies, OrangeFin, Lane, Cogent. And we have a bunch of different people staking this. On one end of the spectrum, we have Kathy Wood's ARK, and then we have a bunch of retail stakers as well. We have a mobile app in the App Store. As far as I know, the only app dedicated to Solana native staking. And, we really want to continue to grow out that side of the business. In terms of what DATs are trying to do, if you look at it, they're really trying to increase your SOL per share, right? And if you think of like SOL as a numerator and the share count as a denominator, most people are familiar with the model where, okay, if you're trading at a premium to your NAV, you can go and start selling shares into the market, and you can do this financial engineering, right? We do plenty of that. And, that's great. But there's some cons with that, and it gets complicated as well. Whether you're using basic MNAV, fully diluted MNAV, it can be confusing to value. For us, what we really want to focus on as well is our organic growth, right? Where if we're actually generating revenue, that's SOL coming into our treasury, the share count stays constant, right? And our SOL per share goes up. And I got to insert every fancy compliance term here. This is not investment advice, but if you were to think about why you should invest in SOL strategies, number one would be if you want a long SOL, we're going to always offer you more SOL exposure because we're increasing SOL per share. Number two is because we run validators. If you believe in Solana, the network, the more transactions that happen on chain, the more that we're going to benefit ourselves because validators are the one that build blocks. And as you see all these different RWAs, tokenized stocks, all these new things are coming on chain just from like huge institutions, just tokenized stocks all over the place. We're really excited about that. And that's why we're bullish on Solana.
Yeah, I remember seeing some stats recently that Solana is by far the biggest chain in terms of at least tokenized equities. What Sol Strategies messaging to people from more of a finance background about why Solana versus Bitcoin treasury or an Ethereum treasury?
Yeah, great question. The way I talk about this to TradFi people is, Mike, you and I are sitting here talking in real time across the country. Yet, if I want to go trade a stock on a Saturday, just due to some global macro event where this isn't political at all, but there could be a war starting on a Saturday, or you can't do it, right? And it's archaic where you and I can sit here talking in real time. We can't do it. Solana is really solving that problem where you have this 24/7 network that is fast and easy to use. And you have all these protocols built on top of it that are purpose built for trading. It's fast, it's cheap, and all these new different assets are coming on chain. And truly, I believe we can get to a 24/7 decentralized NASDAQ, which has so many other benefits I'm not even going to talk about just yet, but even just high frequency trading. So many people are tired of these timing games, right? In a world with MCP, don't want to get too technical here. You can make it more fair. That's really my pitch.
Excellent. So for Sol Strategies, obviously your ticker on NASDAQ is STKE for staking. You earn revenue from staking, I guess also fees, Gito tips. How else do Sol Strategies make revenue? Is there more to it? Is there leverage? Is there other assets involved? What comprises your revenue?
Yeah. So right now I can talk about what things are right now. It is staking for the most part, but there's two parts of the staking business. Number one is us staking to our own validators, right? And that's what a lot of different DATs do, and that's great. And DATs can stake and they earn revenue. Another side of that equation, which is unique to us, is that we earn money off other people's stakes because we're running validators. A very small portion of our overall stake is actually from our own treasury. When we last announced we had 430,000 SOL, now we have 2.7 million SOL delegated across our validators. We're earning additional SOL from other people staking to our validators. But really what we want to expand into multiple different verticals, right? I can't talk too much about that yet, but we want to be a true Solana focused company where we are building different products and services that help power developers, users, whatever, to use Solana and make their lives better. And working on some of those things, excited to share more later.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it. So for a retail investor who has some awareness of this kind of world of blockchain and crypto, I guess Sol Strategies and other DATs give them the ability to get an exposure to the growth of the network without really being bogged down in a lot of the complexities of crypto as well.
Absolutely. That's another fantastic point, right? my dad, for example, I've talked to him about Bitcoin for a while, and my dad is just not going to be somebody that is going to hold his own private keys. And,
Hmm.
he prefers to do something like hold a Bitcoin ETF, for example.
Hmm.
Right. And I think great. And there are plenty of people who want exposure to Solana or assets in general and don't want to hold private keys. And ETFs are one way, DATs are another way. They do compete a little bit, but they're uniquely different structures. And retail for sure can benefit from those types of things.
Excellent. Are you doing anything with the staked tokens? I know there was a lot of talk about LSTs maybe a year ago. Is Sol Strategies pursuing anything regarding LSTs?
Definitely a space we're looking at. We have held Cheeto Soul in the
Hmm.
past.
Hmm.
And that had some unique advantages for us. We run some pretty highly performing validators. We're ranked fifth in Jito's delegation algorithm right now. So when we held Jito Soul, it was still staking partly to our validators. I love liquid staking. I think native staking is also great. But that's definitely a space that we're looking at, and I'll leave it at that.
Excellent. So we've talked a lot about digital asset treasuries. In terms of a company doing their own strategic reserves, what are your thoughts on that? Where do you think the market is going? I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, and just to clarify, you mean for any company to do a strategic reserve?
Hmm.
Yeah. Listen, I think it's a really great thing because if you just take a step back and you look at any public company or really any company in general, every company wants capital, right? The more capital they have, the more interesting things that they can do. I don't think there's any company in the world that'll go out there and say, hey, listen, like we have enough capital, we're happy. I don't think there's any company out there that does that. And, what you can do is you can then invest some of your treasury in some of these assets that you might believe can go up in value. Bitcoin is a very commonly held asset in treasuries, right? And commonly can mean relative. Not so many public companies are doing that yet, but relative to crypto assets, for sure. Our belief is really that Sol is going to go significantly up in value as well, just because of all these innovations that are coming on chain. Wall Street has really been looking at Bitcoin for many, many years now. And I would say they're just starting to come to Solana. And we think Sol has a higher upside potential than Bitcoin and an ETH. I think it's a great idea, really, because if it's one of those things where it can bring the company more capital if it goes up in value, and every company can benefit from more capital.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Max Kaplan at Soul Strategies. Yeah, it's been great having you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.